Hello, everyone. Welcome to the final week of the Fall 2021 Bright Futures Career Speaker Series. The Bright Futures Career Speaker Series is an educational webinar series sponsored by the College of Marin, the Marin County Office of Education, and the Workforce Alliance of the North Bay. Today's presentation topics will cover careers in biotech and automation engineering. As people are logging on today, I'd like to do a quick round of introductions. My name is Sita Williams, and I work for the Workforce Alliance of the North Bay. Moderating today, we have Alex Jones from the College of Marin. And presenting today, we have Dr. Brianna Stubbs from the Buck Institute for Research on Aging, Bill Mueller from Lucid Automation Security, and Jacob Lasila from Genentech. And before we get started with today's speakers, I'm going to do some housekeeping so that we're all on the same page throughout the webinar. We will be recording this webinar, so if you'd like to see it again, just let us know. And so why do we offer a career speaker series? Well, first, we'd like to introduce you to some of our local professional experts. We'd like to introduce you to jobs that you might not have heard about before. And we'd like to help you to make informed decisions about the next steps on your career path, whether you're a student or a job seeker. So what to expect today? The presentation hour will include an introduction, like we're doing right now, speaker presentations, and then question and answer time. Please use the chat or Q&A function of the webinar to ask your questions. We will repeat the questions out loud to the speakers. And if you get inspired by one of our speakers today and would like to explore educational or training programs in the areas of biotech or automation engineering, I will send out a list of these Bay Area educational programs as a follow-up email. It is not a comprehensive list, but it's a place to start your research if you haven't started already. And if you would ever like help finding a job, please contact one of America's job centers near you. If your local region isn't listed here, please email me after the webinar and I'm happy to find a contact number for you in your local area. I will email this PowerPoint out to you after the webinar. And finally, if you have any questions after the program, you can either email Alex or myself, and I'll be sure to put our contact information in the chat. And with that, Alex, I'm going to hand the mic over to you.
Sorry about that. So welcome everybody, and we're just going to jump right in. And if anybody has any questions as the panelists, discuss a little bit about their journey, talk a little bit about their roles within their organization, what their day-to-day looks like. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to put those in the chat or the Q&A. And we're just going to get started. So Dr. Stubbs, we're going to start off with you. I know you said you had a presentation, so the floor is yours. And I'll just remind you about the time. So just you have to take your time. It's all yours. Thank you.
Okay. Just confirming you can see the slides probably this time. Perfect. Okay. Well, it's a pleasure to be speaking with you all this evening. I work up here at the Buck Institute, and if you've been driving north on 101 up from San Francisco, you'll be able to see it up high on Mount Bedell, and it's a sort of spaceship-looking building here. And so there, my job is a lead translational scientist, and we're focused on helping people live better and longer and understanding the biology of aging. Right, let's try and get this to go. Has it turned or has it gone black? There we go. Okay. So the mission of the Buck is to end the threat of age-related disease for this and future generations and help people live better and longer. And so we're interested in not just the idea of longevity, which would be helping to increase the average life expectancy. And, we're not just interested in helping people live till they're 120, but what we're actually really, really passionate about is increasing this concept that we call health span. So as you get older, things start to break down and your quality of life goes down. And we're really interested in slowing down that process so that more years at the end of your life are full and enjoyable, and also just reducing the cost and burden of healthcare as well. And to do that, at the Buck, our main business, let's just say, is we're a series of research labs that are doing basic science experiments that are focused on the biology of aging. Most of the labs at the Buck are funded by the government. So after the last couple of years, we'll all have heard of the NIH and branches of National Institute of Health, and the researchers at the Buck submit funding applications that are reviewed by people in the government and other scientists, and that determines who gets research funding to pursue their research questions. But one of the things that's really unique about the Buck compared with other research organizations, like say UCSF or Stanford, is we're not a teaching institute, and we actually get a lot of money as well from industry partnerships. And so that means that we have companies that pay us to do research projects at the Buck. We also come and start our own companies that are based on discoveries that are made at the Buck. And sometimes if we don't want to start a company ourselves, then we actually find companies who want to license and pay to use the inventions and discoveries at the Buck. So we generate the ideas and we patent them, and then we can use that in like a business transaction with other companies. So the Buck is this really nice blend of basic science research, but also with some industry focus as well. So that's a little bit about the Buck. A little bit about me is that, as you can tell from the accent, I'm not from the side of the pond originally. I grew up and studied in Oxford, England. I was initially thinking that I was going to be an MD because I liked science and I liked talking to people, and it just sort of seemed like, you know, one of the obvious career choices. And in England, you can do the first 3 years of your scientific training before you go into the hospital, and you get a full degree after that. So I did my undergraduate medicine, and then I decided I would take a sabbatical year and do some sport and also some research as well. And that's how I got going into scientific research. And that led into doing a PhD, which wasn't necessarily part of the plan. I was thinking that once I'd done my PhD, I'd go back to medical school, but actually during my PhD, I was working on a special nutritional product that was called a ketone body. And this special ketone body that I was researching in my PhD actually ended up being licensed, like I mentioned earlier. So kind of sold off to a company, as it were, to commercialize. And so I actually went from my PhD to join the company that licensed the drink that I was working on in my PhD. And the company was called HVMN. You can see me here doing a Q&A, but that company was over here in San Francisco. And then subsequent to that, I spent 2 years as the research director at the startup. And it was a startup of about 8 people. I was the only scientist. It was a lot of like science communication. So taking technical scientific concepts where, you know, I was very expert and very deep in the weeds, but also then translating them and making them accessible for people who had no background in science. I also did a lot of investor pitching. So people wanted to know why what we were doing was exciting, and I briefed the press, did some media stuff. I spoke a lot. We were interested in selling this ketone body drink as an energy source for sports teams and the military. So I spent a lot of time speaking to sports teams, and also I went to lots of different military bases all over the US to give talks and answer questions about my research and the product that the company had developed. So I got a lot of experience at non-scientific development, and I really felt like I didn't want to be in science communications as my whole career. And so the opportunity came to move to the Buck and have more of a hybrid role where I was directly involved in some of the science research at the Buck and working day to day with academics, but then also partnering. And my specific job was to partner with a company that wanted to make their own ketone body product that was based out of inventions and technology that had come out of the Buck. So it was kind of like what I'd done before, but with more of a heavy science emphasis. And so the picture you can see on the right there was I actually did do some media for the recent product launch. And it's really been a career highlight for me to see research that I've been part of on kind of like the bench scale, like very, very early research, going all the way through a pipeline and becoming a consumer product that my friends can go and buy on Amazon, and that's sort of really like out there in the wild. So it's been a cool journey to do that twice now. My like extracurricular activities is that I was an elite rower on the British national rowing team, and that's actually why I decided to step out of medical school, because I won the world championships, and it was a real challenge to balance my studies and then the early stage of my career with being on basically a full-time athlete. And now I live out here in California. I train for Ironman triathlon and juggle that with my work as well. I train about 20 hours a week and qualified for the World Championships in Kona, Hawaii later in the year. So I'm a bit of an exercise nut as well. So what is lead translational scientist? I actually kind of came up with my own job title in discussion with my boss. What does it mean and what do I do? Really, my job is to translate the scientific discoveries that are really detailed and not very applied, perhaps that go on at the bench, at the buck, and make it into something that people can hold and touch and interact with and ultimately make a product. In order to do that, I work with everyone at all ends of the like product development and scientific research pipeline. So I've listed them out here. I can kind of talk you through what it looks like. So I work with the academics. They're the people that really understand the biology, and you need to understand the biology somewhat as well as them, so you can have a conversation and understand where they're coming from. They come up with the ideas, and I help them with the legal business of patenting those ideas, writing patents, filing patents, maintaining patents. Once you have a patent for an idea, then it becomes the job of the business development department to find someone who is interested in using that patent in a business or an industry sense. So we've done that now, right? The products and development that I've been involved with have been consumer products, but at the Buck, we also may discover molecules that could be more like drugs that would be developed by a company a little bit more like Genentech or a big pharma company. So once you found you've got your patent, you found a partner, you might then need to secure other investment funding. So we often speak to venture capital funds who are interested in putting money to actually start a company and fund work that develops these products. Once you've got then your compound, you've got your compound, you've got your patent, you've got your money and your science, you then need to do a lot of scientific testing and regulatory testing. So I've been involved with contract research organizations, and what I do there is the biologist at the site who's really good at doing a toxicology study, and a toxicology study is what we do in animals to prove that something's safe for humans to take. They're really specialist at that, and they understand all the parameters of those experiments and the high quality that needs to be followed, but they don't understand the biology that we're kind of implementing in that system necessarily. And so my role in those conversations is going to be, we are designing this protocol, what's the appropriate dosage, what's the appropriate timing, what effects might we expect to see or not expect to see. So you bring kind of the scientific expertise specific to that biology. And then once the ingredient is approved that we were working on, notice I say ingredient because I haven't yet worked on a drug development pipeline. It's only been kind of nutritionals and supplements. But once you've got the safety package in order, then it becomes a completely different beast where you're thinking about product development, like, is it going to be a beverage? Is it going to be a pill? Is it going to be a powder? What does that even look like? We tried making ketones into little boba, so like jello kind of balls at one point. And then manufacturing, how can we go to scale and make it cheaply? Is the compound stable? And I've been like part of all of these discussions. And then ultimately some of the stuff to do with marketing and e-commerce, building a website, getting social media followers. And often they'll need scientists to check the quality of the claims that they're making on an Instagram post, or if they're going to write a blog article about why ketone bodies are interesting, they'll have me read it for science as well. So it's very, there isn't really a typical day, but when I was thinking about this, thinking about what I've been doing recently, there's a lot of planning and reading protocols, and you have to always be on top of the scientific literature. I'm not at all really on the bench. It's not a bench science job, but there are obviously a lot of roles at the Buck where people are just doing basic science research, and that's not really what I do. I wanted to talk a little bit, and I know we have someone from Genentech here, so I don't want to like take anything that he's going to discuss, but there's quite a lot of differences between doing scientific research in academia versus in industry. And there's definitely pros and cons to each. And I'm really glad that I found a hybrid role, because I think that the cons of each would probably frustrate me too much if I was too much in one bucket. So if you want to be an academic scientist, you're going to have to go through graduate school, you're going to have to get a PhD, and then there's a period of time which is called a postdoc, which is where you're kind of a scientific apprentice. Some people do multiple postdocs and it takes several years, and you build up to becoming more independent and then ultimately getting a tenure track job. Tends to be, the generalization is that when you're early in your career, you're going to be doing more of the bench work. So working with animals, collecting samples, sort of very, very hands-on science. And then as you get further up that kind of career ladder, you're going to be doing less of that yourself. You'll be supervising people who are doing that work, and you'll actually be writing papers or grant applications, and you'll be more responsible for the overall intellectual development of the program that you're overseeing. As well as with industry, I know people who have gone into really good industry jobs and had good progression without going to graduate school. There is a lot of really good rotational programs in companies like Genentech. I have friends who have done rotational programs, places like that. And so if you don't think that you want to go through graduate school and spend a lot of time doing something like that, if you're not sure, then it doesn't necessarily preclude you from having an industry job if you haven't been to graduate school. And there are a lot of careers within the science and biotech industry that are supporting roles like regulatory or marketing, where having a science background would be useful, but you don't actually need to be a scientist. So then sort of like what's the point, or the kind of the North Star of each of these two buckets? And academia, I kind of look at it, it's like you're doing research for research's sake. It doesn't need to have an obvious commercial value. And also it can be a lot longer lead time as well. So you'll have PIs, principal investigators and scientists who are pursuing something that is it's never going to be a product. We're never going to be able to patent anything from it, but scientifically it's interesting. And that's, the beauty of academia, is that you can pursue these things which are not necessarily going to create value immediately. The outcomes of academic research are papers and grants, and also mentoring students up through the lab. Whereas in industry, you've always got concrete deliverables. You're trying to discover new molecules, get patents, processes, and papers, and academic publications are definitely secondary or tertiary, much lower down the sort of prioritization of how industry measures success. Then a couple of other points, sort of comparison between the two. Often people think academia is a lot more relaxed and flexible. There's definitely less kind of corporate culture in the Buck and in all of the research labs that I've been in. People, you've got a bit more flexibility, but often it's definitely not less work to be in academia. It kind of can bleed into weekends and late at night. And, I feel like in industry, there can often be there's a good 9 to 5 kind of mentality. But whereas in academia, no one's going to care if you take an afternoon off here or there. It's not like clocked in, clocked out, but it's definitely going to still take up as much time. And one of the biggest differences is in funding. So with academic research, like the government funded research that's done at the Buck, writing an application can take months, then there takes months for them to be reviewed, and then some months for the work to get going. And then it's a 2 or 3 year research program where you don't really have to report anything until the end of the program. So maybe from start to finish of a 2-year research program, you're going to have like 3 or 4 years given the application and whatnot either side. Whereas in industry, things happen so much quicker, and it's been really exciting and rewarding to work on this industry collaboration, where we took something that was, when I joined the Buck in 2019, I was given 10 little bottles of ketone compounds, and then 18 months later, I can wave around a product that I helped to develop. And that doesn't normally happen in pure academic work. So industry is a lot faster paced. And then, again, another really important thing is funding itself. And in academia, it can be very difficult and competitive to get funding if you're not working on a super fashionable area. There's so many really good candidates and good applications. Whereas if you're in industry, you don't have to worry about securing funding for yourself. But you then, on the flip side, you're not going to get funding for a pet project that you're interested to pursue. The company is only going to fund work that they're interested in. So yeah, that's the main points I wanted to compare the two, and I'm happy to take questions about that. Then thinking about just generally what skills do you need to be a scientist? It's hard because obviously there's a lot of different disciplines within biopharma science. This is sort of my attempt to summarize a little bit. You definitely need to have a good attention to detail and a lot of persistence and patience. You have to be able to analyze and criticize and ask questions, and ultimately you do need to be the sort of person that can retain knowledge, whether that's theoretical knowledge like by reading papers. You have to be able to learn through reading, learn by listening to lectures or podcasts, but you also need to be very good at picking up skills like all the kind of analytical techniques that we use in the laboratory. There's so many different ones, and some of them require a lot of dexterous skills and also being very precise as well. So it's not just theoretical knowledge. In order to get through those early scientific years, you need to be practically skilled as well. And then, I put communication at the end because I think that the stereotypical scientist is maybe, a bit of an introvert and not necessarily the best at communication. And I think that you can get by being an introvert, being a scientist, especially if you've got good written communication, because I think good written communication is really important to be able to report your research in papers and also to secure more funding in grants. And I would just generally tend to say that I think that science communication skills can be a bit more important in some industry roles, but it really does vary. But I think a good written communication skills are a core skill for scientists. And then finally, finishing up what I wish I'd known. I think that a lot of people find an area of science that they think is going to be really interesting, and then they go after that and can be a little bit disappointed. But I think that if you find a good lab culture to do your research project in, that might make up for the project itself being a little bit less interesting. During my PhD, I had some difficult relationships with some of my supervisors, and I knew people who had difficult relationships with like co-workers in their lab or supervisors, and it's just trying to get research done in a unproductive or an unsupportive lab environment is really, really difficult. So if you have an option, if you're thinking about pursuing an internship or a project in a science lab, make sure that the lab culture is a good fit for you, but even if the project is something that is not necessarily the top of your list. I think people are attracted towards glamorous projects and maybe end up in a situation that's not very good and not very fulfilling. And then really, in the last few years of my time at Buck, I've become even more aware of all of the career opportunities that there are in science and in industry. And I think that especially if you're going through school and college, it might be easy to assume you're going to go to graduate school and then you're going to be a postdoc and then sort of on the academic treadmill. But there's actually so many good career options for people to still be involved in science and use their scientific training outside of academia. But from my experience, I think that it's not that easy to find out about them. So I think you have to be quite active in going out and trying to talk to people and trying to figure out all of the different options that there are available, because I think that it's the default is to be on the academic treadmill path and not get off it. And there's a lot more out there other than just sort of doing graduate school, postdoc, and then lead scientist at an institute like the Buck. So that is me done. I will take questions from the group. Thank you.
Yeah, Dr. Stubbs, thank you. I had a bunch of questions. You just knocked all those out. I thought I had a busy day. I'll just go ahead and retract that too. I don't. Then, you're training for Ironman, you're doing all these things, hybrid roles, right on. But no, one of the students asked a question, and you kind of touched on this. What was the hardest part about becoming like a doctor? You kind of touched up on those areas in terms of like the culture and the fit. Were those the hardest parts that you had to kind of overcome in order for you to become a doctor, or is there anything else that kind of pops out?
I think, so the hardest thing of getting a PhD is that you're very responsible for your own research. And, as I mentioned, the fit is important, because if you don't have a good mentor to support you, you can feel very alone. And so during my PhD, my professor, who was my mentor, was spending a lot of time on the company that I ended up, doing some stuff with subsequent to my PhD, but her attention was very divided. And so there was a lot of times that I had to make decisions or try and find stuff out for myself where it would, I didn't have that much support. So you have to be able to be a self-starter, and you get there, it's a long program. A PhD is a long program. So you learn, you're not expected to be the finished product in the first year that you do it. You get there over time, but it's challenging to make decisions by yourself. There's also just like science is very, very messy, and it doesn't work a lot of the time, like 95% of the time things don't work. So there's a lot of time where you're troubleshooting, or you have to be very, very meticulous and persistent and patient to try and figure out why it's not working, and to kind of keep motivated. And just sometimes stuff just goes wrong. Like I remember I spent a whole day pipetting out a 96 well plate with all different things in all of the different wells, and I was going upstairs to put it in the plate reader and I dropped it, and you're just like, oh, it's the worst. So doing my PhD was like rolling a boulder up a hill every day, but it's because it's such a long project and you really have to have stamina to get through it. But I think that through sport, I knew that good things don't really like happen overnight, and you have to train and put in the work and just show up every day. And that mentality was really important getting through the PhD.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing all of that with everybody. A lot of great information. And if there's any students or any participants on the call who have any questions, that come up later, feel free, to reach out to us, send it to us. We'll make sure to get those answered for you. And before we transition to the next panelist, and thank you so much again for taking time. I know you have to get off at 5. Super random question. You've done all these things. You've worked in, academia, industry, hybrid roles, Ironman. I was like, wow, that's crazy. I just have to give a shout out to that again. Is there anything next that after you completed all these tasks, you hit all these outcome benchmarks, milestones? Is there anything you're like, I'm going to do this next? Or you're like, I'm staying with Buck, this is where it's at? I'm just curious.
The Buck, I've talked a lot about culture. The Buck is a really great culture. I have really great mentors, and I feel very like I can be safe but also develop there. And when you find something like that, you're like, okay, I've got to find things that will grow my career but within this framework. And so I mentioned that I've done 2 consumer product developments, and the next thing that I want to work on is a drug product development. And so that's a really nice build on my existing skill set into like a new area that would potentially mean that in the future I could go and work for a pharmaceutical company. The other thing that I would maybe like to do is actually have my own formal NIH government research funding and be more hands-on involved in research myself. So career-wise, it would be to do some drug development work and also to get some government funding and continue to do my own research as well.
Well, thank you again. Know you have to jump off right on time. So perfect. Thank you. And if anybody else has any questions at all, feel free to put it in the box, send us an email. We'll make sure to get those answered for you. But then thanks again, Dr. Stubbs. Have a good evening. Thank you so much. And we're now going to transition over to Jacob. Jacob, so to start it off, just share with the other participants, other individuals on the call, just a little bit about your journey. We can jump into your role at Genentech, whatever direction you want to go. The floor is yours.
Cool, thank you, Alex. Yeah, I mean, Dr. Stubbs really helped. I was wondering, because I'm on the whole different far side of where she does research, that she was covering a lot of stuff that I was like, thank goodness she covered that, because if I explained it, it was not going to be. But as far as where I'm at currently right now, I'm a utility plant specialist out of Genentech in South San Francisco. Genentech is considered the birthplace of biotech. Some of the first equipment that was introduced into biotech was custom made at Genentech and for Genentech. I mean, for example, there was a Pierce steam generator that I was working on a couple years ago. We pulled it out because there was a leak on the vessel, and the serial number was 000001. And we were like, wait a second, is that the first, so it's kind of cool in that sense. And Dr. Stubbs really brought up to where she wants to go from the research into the drug production. And so that's where I come in. That's where my group, our group is on the manufacturing drug production side. So anything that goes inside for the drug manufacturing, we take care of all those systems. So our group is the mechanics, the system owners, the troubleshooters, the first responders for any clean HVAC, HEPA, clean air going into cold rooms that are maintaining the temperatures of where the product's at. Taking city water and making it deionized water for drug production inside to where they can use that water to clean their tanks that product is in contact with. So yeah, taking city water, filtering that, going through reverse osmosis, ultrafiltration skid, CDI, like you name it on either way. We have bio-waste systems to where we deal with all the byproduct of production, to where we have to neutralize the pH and treat it before it gets sent back to the city. A lot of nasty stuff, a lot of nasty byproducts, but and then a lot of pure steam generation to where we're taking plant steam from the boiler plant and we're using that to heat up the deionized water, and that's getting converted into steam. And then we also have a lot of, we have vapor compression and a multiple effect Wi-Fi stills, and that's our water for injection. So that's basically where you're vaporizing. It's just like vodka distillery. It's the same kind of process to where you're distilling the water and making it into a higher quality. So on that end, day to day, my day to day, I was a lead operator. So I'm in charge of shift of operators to where I'm assigning out work. I'm in direct contact with operations to where if they have an issue with a skid that they're working on inside, we respond if there's any HVAC that goes down or any differential pressure issues in the rooms. We have to respond to those as well. So I make sure our guys are out there, and we have to basically find root cause analysis for all these issues, because a lot of the importance is on, like, with the oversight of the FDA and audits and regulatory officials that come on site, because they're making sure that all the work that Dr. Stubbs has done, all of our scientists at Genentech, all the drug manufacturing, we have to account for any deviation in that process and any failures that affect the quality of the product. So we have to account, we have to document. A lot of our work is on documentation. And we have to really make sure that we're finding those issues and diagnosing those. So day-to-day basis, I can be taking apart a pump that has a leak on an equipment, troubleshooting reverse osmosis system, changing out membranes, do a cleaning. Could also be troubleshooting HVAC while we're not getting proper supply airflow. Right now, where I'm transitioning is kind of like where Dr. Stubbs was talking about, to where you can have rotational opportunities at certain companies. So right now we have an engineering support group that supports all of our work. If we want to change an aspect of our system, if we want to do an improvement, if there is a discrepancy that we need to do a further investigation, a deep dive into the quality impact on the product. These are where our engineers come in and really look at it from like a 50-foot level and really dig in deep as to far as, like, okay, what is the overall impact? What do we need to document? What do we need to talk to? How can we, because a lot of our systems, like based on materials, we can't just go in and change material. We have to classify, okay, if we want to change this material, we have to, how does this material interact with the process, and how does this interact with the product if it was to come in contact? So a lot of it on that. I mean, there's different jobs in our group to where we have operators that check all the equipment on a day-to-day basis, lead operators who are in charge. We have mechanics that work on the drug product equipment. So we have a lot of tanks, a lot of manifolds, agitators. And we also have specialized mechanics who work on fillers and cappers for the actual drug product itself. So like when she was talking, when Dr. Stubbs was talking about different forms of the product, like to where it's like a hockey puck or something like that, to where like, or if it's filled in a vial. There's a whole different process and different machines to where these are automated machines. I mean, any different sort of manufacturing place, it's just a different form of end product right now. And so the coolest part about working at Genentech is knowing that like, okay, when I go into work, like I'm going to work for a different process. We have products in our pipeline that if we don't do our job and we don't do our due diligence, they can hold batches, they can hold lots until we figure out root cause for issues. And that is affecting the people at the end of, like, people that need Avastin, that need Actemra, that need Herceptin, breast cancer, things like that, to where it's like, if we don't get that product down the road, if we don't get it out to the end user, all that work that Dr. Stubbs has done, all the work that drug manufacturing has done, it can't get to the end user and it can't help save lives there. So I don't know, it's one of those things to where going to work, it makes me a little bit more excited. It makes the process a lot more exciting, knowing that like whenever you solve an issue, whenever you fix or whenever you find that root cause and you are able to provide those answers, those are more products that are getting out the table. The less downtime there is on equipment, the less power failures. With PG&E, we've had a lot of power failures lately to where we have to restart equipment. We can't necessarily just restart the equipment. We can't turn on a water system. We have to do trending analysis. We have to do certain return to service if we have to clean the system, because there's all different factors that affect the quality and what the FDA dictates for us. So as far as my background on how I got to this, yeah, Dr. Stubbs definitely has a lot more background on a lot of the drug manufacturing. I had no drug manufacturing, no research, didn't know a thing about biotech before I came. I graduated from Cal Maritime with a degree in facilities engineering technology out of Vallejo. And I worked with Alex there. He got me set up with an internship at Genentech. I started working with the utilities group and got to learn about the equipment there. At Cal Maritime, I highly recommend it if you want a really hands-on, if you're looking for that STEM degree, if you're looking for the hands-on mechanics, you don't want to just sit in a classroom all day. It's a very rigorous program, and it's there for you to not mess around and to go through the program with a job at the end. And that's what I learned being there. And the main thing I learned all across the board, I learned automation, instrumentation, I learned troubleshooting on boiler plants. I learned how to operate steamship, diesel engines, learned welding, learned system diagnostics with preventative maintenance on equipment, facilities management, HVAC, refrigeration. And that's a lot of it day to day at Genentech is just every day something different is coming up, with different equipment failing, different PMs being performed. And so I started right after college. I think I had a month or a week. I think I had a week off from college before I started Genentech, and then been there ever since. The rotation I'm doing right now at work, we're commissioning a new building at Genentech, and so it's for new technology, for single-use technology. It's the future of biotech right now. And so right now we're going to, right now we are commissioning all the systems. We're starting up systems. We're looking for failures on systems, trying to stress test, trying to go through qualifications. So I mean, it's a really cool thing, a different transition. Whole bunch of different opportunities if you want to go into management at Genentech, if you want to stay in engineering, or if you want to stay working out in the field, if you want to be a mechanic and everything like that. So I would say the most my knowledge, I know that I know that as far as where I want to be, I want to stay on the engineering side. But I mean, everybody's working for you, everybody's working with you. Everybody's in a support system, everybody trusts each other. It's just people that want to be there and work for that person at the end of the pipeline, that end user. I mean, the biggest attribute that I have at work that I would say going for natural skills would be the communication, people leadership, the ability to go into a room and regardless of whoever's background or knowledge, work with anybody, basically work with everybody to get the best option forward and best path forward for solving solutions and driving solutions. My biggest advice for those of you listening in is if you're looking either going to college or going to a trade school, or if you want to get working experience beforehand, is always put your best foot forward. Reach out. I mean, there's a lot of great resources with CETA, Alex. I mean, even myself, Bill, and Dr. Stubbs. If you have any questions in this field, I mean, the best thing that you can do is reach out and start getting the conversation going. Because if you don't get that conversation going, yeah, it's a tough road, because the doors that have been open for me have been with me poking and prodding and trying to get my voice heard in the meetings. And I would just say, like, if you want to try new opportunities, always bring them up to whoever your manager is or supervisor is in the future. What I have learned from my experience is managers and supervisors always want somebody that's proactive. They want somebody that they don't have to worry about. They want somebody who is a driver that can work on their own deadlines and hit their deliverables. Yeah, and then also too, there's a whole bunch of different options. If you're interested in the manufacturing side or in the mechanics side, there's a lot of different options other than biotech. I know this is a biotech specific, but you can always reach out to me or Alex. Alex has a lot of background in the engineering side of things. So reach out if that's something you're interested in. There's a whole wide array, and probably, as Bill might talk about too later on, is there's a huge shortage, a huge backlog of individuals not wanting to go into the trades and not wanting to go into the blue collar workforce. So if that's something you're interested in, there is always jobs available. Right now, I believe that we are getting openings in our group and increasing headcount. And so it's like, yeah, definitely that's something anybody's interested in. But yeah, that's pretty much what I have. I know Dr. Stubbs covered a lot of the back end on the biotech, but I mean, if you love working with your hands, you love using your brain, you like fixing things and solving problems and working for a bigger purpose, biotech's a really great industry to be in, especially on the mechanics side. So if the doctorate and the PhD intimidate you, I am on the more entry level biotech, to where, yeah, it's been very interesting learning all about the biotech, but it's a really cool process, and everything's clean that you work on too, which is pretty cool.
Well, thanks, Jacob. They're killing me today, because I had a list of questions. Like, I'm just going to go ahead and take that one off. I was like, well, they're not going to talk about this. Like, oh, you're just going to go ahead and talk about that. Okay, let me take that off. No, I appreciate everybody, and thank you for communicating to all the participants on the call today that there are various opportunities available, within these spaces on multiple levels that require, various types of experience and degrees, so if, thank you for kind of demystifying that for everybody. Just because, if you want to work at the Buck, if you want to work at the Genentech, the BioMarines, there's various positions, multiple positions that are available. There's various ways, multiple ways to get there. So like Jacob was saying, if you have any questions and you want to explore a little bit more about like these opportunities, feel free to reach out to us. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the box now. If not, think about them, go ahead and get those back to us. we'll make sure we get those answered for you. But if nobody has any questions, thanks a lot, Jacob. You can stay on the call. If you got to go, completely understand. It does get dark earlier now because I was looking outside. So it's about to be 8 o'clock. It's like it's 5:15. Calm down. But no, yeah. If anybody has any questions, please just feel free to let us know. And then Bill, I'm not sure if you're there. You just shut off. Bill, it's your time. However you want to share. If you want to start off with the work, your journey, floor is yours, sir.
The easiest thing to start off with is that, man, I got positioned so well between there because Dr. Stubbs is usually the person hiring me, and I'm doing the work for Jacob. And he's the one that takes it over and keeps that stuff running after I leave. And that note on Cal Maritime, holy crap, the best facilities guys I know that I work with have all come out of there. There's something about standing fire watch on the end of that dock that just gives you a work ethic like no other. So yeah, a couple of gentlemen there. So legit, especially if you want to be like a mechanic or a tradesperson. Definitely a shortage, not going to talk about it, but I could talk about it all day. So anyways, quick introduction is that, so I own a small engineering company that specializes in automated control systems for biotech and pharmaceutical manufacturing. So I'm a contractor. I work for pretty much all the major ones in the Bay Area. So the Genentechs, the BioMarins, the Bayers, Gileads, AstraZeneca, Boehringer Ingelheim, and a couple startups as well, and some also other ones that go through there. My job is so broad that I can't get into everything, but if some I say sounds interesting, I can dive in or stay as high as ever. The kind of pieces that we work with are every part of the biotech. So the upstream, which is the media and buffer prep, the bioreactors and the fermentation processes, to some of the downstream processes that Jacob alluded to, chromatography, tangential filtration systems, diafiltrations. Then a lot of the utility systems, water for injection, the RODIs, all the stuff he talked about. The waste neutralization is currently my interest, not just the pH of it, but temperature. The war stories that Jacob and I can share about his facility in general that I've been part of. Time for when it's not recording. But we also do the data system. So the IT component as well, and cybersecurity for industrial stuff. The keyword for that is ITOT, so information technology, operational technology. So we do a lot of that and a lot of the networking, but then also the data systems that sit on top of all that. Process historians, batch reporting, audit logging, all that good stuff. So I'm just going to leave all those big words sitting there. If anybody's interested, you can go ahead and hit me up for it. Where I think I would go that's a little bit more applicable to your audience, and the reason why I think I got invited is that CETA and I have worked previously for internships in general. And I've been doing this for about 20 years. I've had dozens upon dozens of interns. At Lucid, I've had 8 or 9 now, and a couple that were proposed by CETA that hooked me up with stellar individuals. But I thought, given a little bit of insight, since I've been doing this much on internships in general, that would probably be most applicable to your audience. Really, there's 2 types of internships that you're gonna come into. The first one's an altruistic internship, and the other one is more of an appraisive internships. Altruistic is really giving back, helping people out without really expectation of either a strategic or a financial return for it. You're really helping people out. You're showing the potential next generation of the work ethic that's expected. So giving them some technical training, teaching them, as the high schoolers we have call it, adulting. I'm too old to be using that, so I apologize in advance. But that's in a nutshell what our internship program is, that's focused on high schoolers. So we pull high schoolers, and we also pull pre-undergrads and then undergrads. Appraisive internships are more what you would traditionally think as an internship in general. There is an expectation from the employer that the training that they are providing is going to turn into an actual value that's there. But it's not 100% dedicated to the employer. The employer is looking for any gaps that may have happened in the interview process. Your interview is going to be 1 or 2, or some really bad cases, 6, 7, 8, whatever they give you, but 1 or 2 hours of your time. You're not going to catch everything you need about from somebody. So that gap is filled so that you can determine the worth ethic. You can see that if they're got the skills capable for the job, especially in my field where everything is so absolutely frustrating problems. You know, we're contractors, so that means that their site engineers didn't know how to answer it. So they're contracting us because of our specialized knowledge to try to solve it. So there may not be a solution at the end. And it takes a personality to do that. And until you do it, you don't know if you can do it. But on the flip side of an appraisive one is a real value to the intern themselves. Because one, you probably have no idea what the job is. If you're an intern, you don't know what kind of culture you're trying to look for, what kind of work you're actually trying to do. Do you like the people that you work with? Do you like the hours that you're working with? Are you getting a balance and your life goals fulfilled? And after doing this with, 20 plus interns, nobody knows what they want to do, but there's value in knowing what you don't want to do. So if you sit in there and find out that this sucks, an internship gives you a discrete period of time that at the end of it, you guys shake hands, you say, thank you for the opportunity, but I'm going to take off and find some real work that I dig on. And that has value for both the employer and for the intern as well. Yeah, just understanding the expectations. Some real world examples of the interns that we've ended up hiring. Starting with the high school ones, we've had 3 completed interns and we just hired our 4th just in the last 2 weeks or so. They get to do all the fun projects that I just don't have time to get to. So our first one was a kid from Marin, Robert, and Robert, great kid. He got the job just because he showed off to his teachers that he was really big into it, but he was also into FIRST robotics a lot and spoke well, really sharp kid. Kind of had an idea of where he wanted to go to college into some sort of engineering. His project, after he went through a regular industrial controls training that we have set, he built a Nintendo Entertainment System controller, but industrial size. And this thing is a rock of just cast aluminum and just the coolest buttons ever. And I mean, it's very large and heavy and just amazing. And because he did both the programming component of it and the hardware hands building and all that, he ended up declaring his major as a mechanical engineer, and he ended up at Cal Poly. Second one we got was he just came at a bad time and he ended up going through the intern training, but then he ran the panel shop doing inventory and all that. He was a junior, so he's cool. He's going to come back with us when he's a senior, when he's got a little bit better idea. The other one came in, another one that didn't know if he wanted to do physics or engineering, and if it was engineering, what type of engineering. After working with us, he did not want to be a programmer, and so he went into mechanical, and he's went Ivy League school. That kid is sharp as a tack, really had an interesting take on movies and really added to the culture. I mean, he just sucked it up. He also was part of the COVID transition as well, and he was a champ there, so he's going to be successful. The new guy that we got, this guy has marketable skills already. He's already deployed his own applications. He's done front end and back end development, and he jumped from an altruistic one to an appraisive internship because it just wouldn't be fair with the actual skills he's bringing to there. So he's getting paid like a regular engineer in high school. And the stuff he's working on isn't as sexy and photogenic as the other stuff we're doing. But the kind of modernization that he's doing for the tools is really going to change some of the stuff we do in industry along the validation and the qualification of new systems specifically. Jacob touched on it with the way it's a regulatory environment. This kid's going to do some great things, and hopefully I can help transition him into more of that. But then we also do college ones as well. Natalie was from UC Davis. She came in her internship project. She's got a great work ethic, and she's been working with us for over 2 years now, and huge benefit to the team. Elliot was from UC Berkeley. He wanted to do medical devices originally. He also hit during COVID time. And so we transitioned from doing something manipulative with his hands to artificial intelligence and how to apply it to biotech processes. And another person way smarter than me, especially on the math side, he ended up applying a TensorFlow machine learning algorithm to a chromatography process that does peak detection, UV peak detection for elution processes. It's the purification step at the end of when you're harvesting the proteins that you're looking for. Pretty good work. It sort of worked at all, but he ended up discovering a way to multiply the data that we were putting in to train these models. Every time you run these things, Jacob made a sense. I'll put some dollar cents in industry wise. Since purification is at the end, it's usually at the end of a 90-day batch or so. So the product that's going in is probably worth 150,000 when you first start. By the time you get to purification, you can have million and a half product at purification. So every time you run the chromatography process, it's amazingly expensive. When you teach a machine learning algorithm, normally you're feeding it 10,000 pictures and then you're trying to say, is this a B at the end or something like that? You can't do 100,000 process cycles of a chromatography skid. So he found a mathematical function to duplicate data so that for the training side, you can end up getting the model to fit at the end. And that is absolutely fantastic. And it doesn't fit in with my company, but he ended up getting a job at Genentech, and now they're putting their money behind his stuff. And God, that's going to be another really big thing. And then Josh was the last guy that we just ended up picking. Another medical device guy out of UC Davis. He was making prosthetics or something for handicapped kids in his spare time, and then going to these mechanical contests and stuff. And it wasn't so much the work, it was his game theory that he brought to the table. You know, I read a lot of this stuff about how to sell and stuff, and this kid's game theory was spot on, like CIA level game theory to win these competitions. And it was listening to him talk, first I was frightened, and then I thought, you know, bringing him on my side is going to help. And a fantastic guy. So he ended up helping us develop our in-house fermentation system so that we can test it in our shop before it goes on out. But in every case, these people are there. Oh, one of my mid interns about 8-10 years ago is now my business partner and a co-owner of Lucid. So she is amazing on every level. Yeah, so internships really lead to different things. And I got plenty of stories of interns that have left and gone on to become directors or VPs or people that I work now with. Yeah, it's a very important part of it.
When Bill, thanks a lot. You know, honestly, you guys are making my job difficult today, but easy at the same time. I like how you guys just flowed this for us. I'm just gonna, and thanks a lot. If any students, participants, anybody on the call has any questions, feel free to shoot those over. But yeah, like all the panelists we're talking about, like there's various roles that are available, different opportunities, and like Bill was saying, internships. The best way to kind of figure out like where you might fit within these spaces is to participate in these internships. Getting the hands-on, seeing like if that's something you actually want to do. The end result is you'll be able to discover through that short-term kind of experience, is that something you want to do? You may be able to identify educational institutions that are actually kind of teaching the content for the stuff that you do like to do, and at that point, you'll then begin to open up various opportunities, with Bill's company, Buck, Genentech. So if there's a takeaway, and there's a lot of takeaways, I would definitely highly recommend, think about what everybody said, think about, maybe what opportunities you would like to kind of participate in. And also, I just wanted to add, if you do an internship, if you can receive credit through College of Marin, that will count as elective units, that will count towards your associate's degree, that'll count towards a bachelor's degree. So I just want to let everybody know that as well too, that is something that we're really starting to kind of put together and kind of inform people and push the message out there that participate in these opportunities, they're beneficial for you and they're not going to throw you off your education trajectory. But at that point, like Sita, please take us away, close up. Everybody, thank you, by the way. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And Alex, I think you just said it perfectly. Thank you so much, Bill and Jacob and Dr. Stubbs, who's had to sign off, for taking the time this afternoon, right before dinner and at the end of the workday to talk to our students and our job seekers. And I just think today went like the combination of all of you together was just fabulous and amazing. And so thank you very much for your time. And I will be following up with you. I'll send you the link to the video and as well, I'll send it to the students. So thank you very much. And I think we should just say all good night and we'll end the recording.